I look too good to be alone.
So now let's talk about the formative assessment and the summative assessment. So first we have the formative assessment, and as we all know that the formative assessment takes place during instruction or during the formative process, which is to provide the teacher with the information regarding how well the learning objectives of a given learning activity are being met. And in formative assessment, teachers monitor student learning to get ongoing feedback to improve their teaching and for students to improve their learning. So in formative assessment, students are helped to identify the strengths and weaknesses and target areas that need work. Likewise, teachers are also helped to recognize where students are struggling and so address problems immediately. It is evidence-based improvement of ongoing teaching to learning. So it is not sound to assess learning only at the end of a unit. Many teacher has presumed everything is clear to students only to get frustrated at the end of the unit that a lot of things were not understood. It is like proceeding to XYZ when ABC were not yet mastered. So it is not only frustrating but also a waste of teaching to learning time and effort. So formative assessment is referred to as assessment for learning because it is meant to ensure that learning takes place, and in the process of instruction, the teacher checks on students' learning if he or she discovers that concepts and skills are not yet mastered. Right there and then, the teacher teaches to ensure learning. Thus, the phrase assessment for learning. So, how do teachers do formative assessment? So, teacher can determine students' level of understanding while teaching by asking students questions. So, a usual question that teachers ask to find out if their students can follow the lesson is, "Did you understand?" Class usually responds in chorus, "Yes, ma'am," or "Yes, sir." So a better way to check on students' level of understanding, however, is to find out if indeed they understood the lesson by asking them questions or using other ways of formative assessment. So that is all about the formative assessment. So however, the summative assessment, this is used to evaluate student learning at the end of a defined instructional period, while formative assessment earlier is referred to as assessment for learning, and summative assessment is referred to as assessment of learning. So it is assessment of learning typically at the end of a project, unit, course, or semester, or program, or school year. After diagnostic assessment, teaching and formative assessment are done. So it is a picture of how much learning took place and to what extent the learning, chapter, unit, or course outcomes were attained. So the results of summative assessment are the basis for grades and report to parents. So actually, the summative assessments are done through paper and pencil test and non-paper and pencil test. So you have learned how to construct paper and pencil test for one semester in the first course on assessment. In this second course on assessment, you will learn how to construct non-paper and pencil test, and you will have a more lengthy discussion on non-paper and pencil test. So however, this traditional assessment and authentic assessment, so let's let's talk about this now. So the traditional assessment includes the paper and pencil test. And paper and pencil test are either the selected response type or constructed response type. So, this was the focus of assessment and learning 1, diba, as you remembered. So, however, in traditional assessment, diba, there is the two types, the selected response type and constructed response type. So, however, the selected response type includes alternate response like true or false, or yes or no, or check or X, and then there is multiple choice, and then there is matching type. However, sa constructed response type is naadara nag-include ang short answer, essay, and also problem solving. So, kagaina nag-talk ta about authentic assessment. So karon ato na siyang i-explain. So now, the term authentic assessment was coined by Grant Wiggins, diba, as you remembered, in 1993, and he is the leading proponent of reform in testing. So assessment is termed authentic because students' knowledge and skill are assessed in a context that approximates the real world or real life as closely as possible. So, the assessment requires student performance that models realistic encounters in life, in contrast to taking a written test or writing an essay. So, that is why authentic assessment is likewise called performance assessment, diba, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, it is. I firmly believe that it is also called as performance assessment. So, authentic assessment is also known as non-traditional assessment and alternative assessment. So, it is referred to as alternative assessment because it offers students more choices than just taking a paper and pencil test like multiple choice or an essay. So, the word alternative, it implies that there is another way of assessing kasi there is another way of assessing learning other than the traditional or paper pencil test that we have been used to, because authentic assessment can be in the form of students' performance to specially display skills learned and mastery of a process or procedure, or in the form of a product or concrete output, diba? So some examples of performance are a student is able to dance tango, diba? To dribble the ball, to send an email, to give a report in class using PowerPoint, to set up an experiment, to lobby at the municipal council. Authentic assessment can be done also by assessing the product of students' learning, such as a haiku composed, a pair of paper written, a videotape interview, a capstone project. So through capstone projects, students explore issues they are passionate about and work toward finding solutions to problems. So however, this norm and criterion reference assessment is we compare a student's performance against a criterion of success, which is the predetermined standard. With criterion reference test, each student's performance is compared directly to the standard without considering how other students performed in the assessment. However, this criterion reference assessment often use like cut scores to place students into categories such as basic, proficient, and advanced. So here is an example. So, the teacher's intended learning outcomes to spell at least 18 out of 20 words correctly. Student A is able to spell 20 words correctly. Student B, 18 words, and student C, 10 words. It is obvious that only students A and B were able to realize the predetermined standard as stated in the intended learning outcome. spell at least 18 out of 20 words correctly.
Students'
So the performance or the score of each student is compared against a standard set by the teacher. So it is not compared against the performance of the other students.
So the composition of the norm group
we'll talk about the norm reference assessment.
An example
So in norm
is
reference assessment,
comparing the performance of 7th
compare
graders in a reading in a particular school system to the performance of nationwide group of 7th graders in reading. So, the norm reference scores are generally reported as a percentile ranking. So there used to be a National College Entrance Examinations or NCEE in the Philippines from 1973 until its abolition in 1994, where students were given percentile ranks. So a student who got a 99th percentile rank in the NCEE means that he belonged to the upper 1% and surpassed 99% of the NCEE examines. A high school graduate who gets 75th percentile rank means he belonged to the upper 25% and was above 75% of the examines. So the meaning of a norm reference score is derived from a comparison of student scores against other student scores or as stated in the scores of the norm group, while the meaning of a criterion reference score is derived from comparing student scores with established criterion of success. So the norm reference score will not tell you whether a student met, exceeded, or fell short of the standard of proficiency. It is the criterion reference score that will tell you whether or not the student met the established standard of success or proficiency. So that would be all. Thank you.